The biggest space station anyone had ever built floated in the dark between stars. It was so large that 50 planets could fit inside it. This was where the most important meeting in the galaxy happened once every year. Today was that day. Ships from hundreds of different worlds came to this place. Some ships looked like giant crystals that sparkled in the starlight. Others were round like bubbles and seemed to be made of gas and light. There were ships that looked like metal insects with sharp edges, and ships that moved like they were alive. Inside the station, the main meeting hall was enormous. The ceiling was so high that clouds formed near the top. Thousands of different creatures sat in special seats that were made for their bodies. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others were made of living rock. A few looked like they were made of pure energy. At the front of the hall sat the 5 most powerful species in the galaxy. They called themselves the council leaders. Everyone else had to listen to what they said. The first leader was Ambassador Kethra from the Hegemony. Her people looked almost like humans but were much taller and had silver skin that shined like metal. They had been the strongest species in the galaxy for over 10,000 years. When Kethra spoke, everyone listened. Next to her sat Ambassador Zixthon of the Zephyrians. His body was made of blue crystal that changed colors when he moved. His people were master builders who could make anything from pure light and energy. They built most of the beautiful cities on the rich planets. The third leader was General Vexkar of the insect-like Vexthari. She looked like a giant mantis but with 4 arms instead of 2. Her people were the galaxy's best fighters. They had won more wars than any other species. The fourth leader was a strange sight. Ambassador Nebulos of the Nebulans had no solid body at all. He was a cloud of purple and gold gas that floated above his seat. His people lived in space itself and never needed planets or ships. The last leader was Elder Thrumdock of the Rockborn. He looked like a small mountain made of gray stone with glowing red eyes. His people were the oldest in the galaxy and remembered things that happened millions of years ago. Today they were going to talk about a request that had made many of them laugh. A young species called humans wanted to join their group. The humans lived on a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy, where nothing important ever happened. Kethra stood up and her silver skin caught the light from above. "We are here to discuss the request from the species that calls itself humanity," she said. Her voice was clear and reached every corner of the huge hall. A big screen appeared in the air above the leaders. It showed pictures of Earth and the humans who lived there. The creatures in the hall started to make the sounds their species made when they found something funny. The Zephyrians' crystals flashed bright colors. The Vexthari clicked their sharp mandibles together. The Nebulans swirled faster. Even the Sirius Rockborn made deep rumbling sounds that meant they were amused. "Look at their technology," said Zixthon, his crystal body flashing yellow with amusement. More pictures appeared on the screen. They showed human rockets that used fire to push themselves into space. They showed human cities that still used electricity from burning coal and oil. They still fight wars with metal bullets, General Vexkar added, her 4 arms moving as she talked. "My youngest warriors use weapons that can destroy whole mountains with one shot." Elder Thrumdock's red eyes glowed brighter. "I have been alive for 50,000 years, he said in a voice like rocks falling down a cliff. "I have seen many young species ask to join us, but none have been this primitive." The laughter in the hall grew louder. Some creatures were making so much noise that their translators could not keep up. Ambassador Nebulos swirled into a tighter cloud. "What do they offer us?" he asked. "What can such a simple species give to our great alliance?" Kethra touched a control and more words appeared on the screen. "They want to prove they are worthy," she read.
"They offer to send one ship to help us fight the silence." The hall became very quiet very quickly.
The silence was not something anyone joked about. It was a group of thinking machines that had gone crazy and was eating whole star systems. The silence had already destroyed 12 worlds and was getting stronger. "One ship?" asked Zixthon. His crystal body had turned a dark blue color that meant he was surprised. "One ship," Kethra confirmed. "They say it will show their commitment to galactic peace." The laughter started again, but this time it was different. It was not just amusement anymore. It was the kind of laughter that happened when someone told a joke that was so bad it became funny. "The silence destroyed our last fleet of 5,000 ships," General Vexkar said. "What can one primitive human vessel do against such power?" "Maybe it can serve as a distraction," suggested one of the smaller species from the back of the hall. "While the silence is destroying it, our real ships can attack." That would be cruel, said Elder Thrumdock, but his glowing eyes suggested he did not really care. Ambassador Nebulos spun faster. I say we let them come. It will be educational for them to see how real galactic warfare works. And entertaining for us, added Zixthon, his crystals now flashing pink with glee. Kethra looked around the hall. All in favor of accepting the human request to participate in the assault on the Silence? Thousands of different arms, tentacles, claws, and other appendages went up into the air. The vote was unanimous. It is decided then, Kethra announced. The humans may send one ship to join our fleet. We will assign it to the rear guard where it will be safest. She paused and her silver skin seemed to shine brighter. Let it not be said that we are not generous to young species, even foolish ones. As the meeting ended and the creatures began to leave, many of them were still making their species sounds of amusement. They talked to each other about the brave but stupid humans who thought one small ship could make a difference. None of them noticed the small figure in the back corner of the hall. Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth sat quietly in a seat that had been made quickly for her human body. She was the only human in the galaxy who was allowed to attend these meetings, and only because the Council wanted someone to tell humanity about their decision. Sarah had listened to every word. She had seen the pictures of Earth's simple technology and heard the laughter of the advanced species. She had watched them vote to let her people participate in what they clearly thought would be a suicide mission. But Sarah was not upset or angry. In fact, she was smiling. She touched a small device hidden in her pocket and sent a message back to Earth. The message was short and simple. They said yes. Begin Phase 2. On Earth, in a secret facility buried deep underground, teams of the smartest humans who had ever lived received Sarah's message. They had been working on something special for 3 years, something that would surprise the galaxy. Sarah stood up and walked toward the exit. Around her, aliens were still laughing and making jokes about the humans and their one small ship. She listened to their jokes and nodded politely when some of them spoke to her. Your people are very brave, said one creature that looked like a walking tree. Yes, Sarah replied. We are. As she boarded her small shuttle to return to Earth, Sarah looked back at the giant space station filled with species that thought they knew everything about war and power and technology. Soon, she thought, they would learn that humans had their own ideas about those things. 3 months had passed since the meeting at the space station. Now the largest war fleet in Galactic. History floated in the darkness near a star called Kepler 442. This was where the Silence had built one of its most dangerous bases. The fleet was so big that it stretched from one side of the solar system to the other. 10,000 ships of war hung in space like deadly jewels. Some were as long as mountains. Others were small and fast like metal birds that could fly faster than light itself. The flagship of the hegemony was the biggest ship anyone had ever seen. It was called the Eternal Glory and was home to 50,000 soldiers. Its weapons could destroy planets. Its shields could stop the light of stars. Admiral Vorthak commanded this mighty vessel and the entire fleet. Next to the Eternal Glory floated the crystal ships of the Zephyrians. They looked like giant diamonds that had been carved by master artists. Each one was beautiful and deadly. Their weapons used pure light to cut through anything. The Vexthari brought their war hives. These ships looked like huge metal insects with weapons instead of legs. Each hive carried 10,000 warrior bugs that could fight in space without any protection. The Nebulans did not need ships. They were ships. Clouds of living gas that could become solid when they wanted to fight. They could change shape to avoid enemy fire and then strike back like lightning. Even the peaceful Rockborn had come to fight. Their ships looked like flying mountains covered in heavy armor and big guns. They moved slowly, but nothing could hurt them. All of these mighty vessels waited in perfect formation. Their commanders talked to each other using communication systems that could send messages across the galaxy in seconds. They checked their weapons and prepared for battle. Then something strange appeared on their sensors. A small dot was moving toward them from the direction of Earth. It was not very fast and it was not very big. What is that? Asked Commander Zalith of the Zephyrians. Her crystal body flashed confused colors as she looked at her. Readings. Checking now, replied Admiral Vorthak from his command. Chair on the Eternal Glory, the flagship's powerful sensors focused on the approaching object. The answer came back quickly. It is the human ship, reported the sensor officer. Designation UES determination. A wave of amusement spread through the fleet. The alien commanders opened their communication channels to get a better look at humanity's contribution to the war effort. The UES Determination was indeed small compared to the other ships. It was only 800 meters long, which made it smaller than some of the fighter craft that the big ships carried. Its hull was dark gray metal with no fancy decorations. It had no glowing energy shields around it. No visible weapon ports. No impressive antenna arrays. That is their warship? Asked General Vexcar. Her mandibles clicked together in what her species considered laughter. It looks like a cargo hauler, said Elder Thrumdock. His rock body rumbled with deep amusement. The human ship moved into the fleet formation slowly and carefully. It found its assigned position in grid section Omega-7, which was the safest place Admiral Vorthak could think of. This put the human ship far behind all the real warships where it could watch the battle but not get in the way. Admiral Vorthak opened a communication channel to the human vessel. UES Determination, this is Admiral Vorthak commanding the fleet. You are assigned to rear observation duty. Do not engage the enemy. Do not leave your position. Your job is to observe and learn. A human voice came back through the speakers. It was calm and clear, belonging to someone who was not afraid. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Determination. We understand our assignment, Admiral. We are ready to do our part. Good, Vorthak replied, then closed the channel. He turned to his officers. Keep an eye on them. Young species sometimes do foolish things in their first real battle. On the other ships, alien crews were using their sensors to scan the human vessel. What they found made them even more confused. I am detecting only 150 life forms aboard their ship, reported the science officer on a Zephyrian vessel. How can they operate a warship with so few crew members? Their technology readings are very strange, added a Vexithari technician. I cannot identify most of their systems. Either their equipment is very primitive or very different from ours. Look at their power output, said a Nebulan scout. It is much lower than it should be for a ship that size. Are they having mechanical problems? The alien commanders shared their sensor data with each other. The more they learned about the human ship, the more they wondered why Earth had bothered to send it at all. The UES Determination had no visible energy weapons. Its hull was made of simple steel and titanium, not the advanced materials that real warships used. Its engines were basic fusion drives that were thousands of years behind galactic technology. Perhaps they are here to surrender to the silence and save us the trouble, joked Commander. Hixara of the Rockborn fleet, meanwhile, inside the UES Determination, Captain Sarah Chen walked through the corridors of her ship. The human crew was busy at their stations, but they did not look worried or scared. They looked focused and determined. Sarah was the sister of Ambassador Sarah Chen, who had attended the council meeting. Like her sister, she was calm and smart and not easily frightened. She had commanded space missions for 15 years, but this was her first time leading a ship to war. Status report, she said to her first officer, Commander James Park. All systems are green, Captain, Park replied. Pandora Protocol is ready for activation on your command. Good, Sarah said. How are the crew holding up? They know what we're here to do, Park answered. Everyone volunteered for this mission. They believe in what we're trying to accomplish. Sarah nodded and looked out at the massive alien fleet around them. Each of those ships could probably destroy the Determination with one shot. Their crews numbered in the thousands or tens of thousands. Their weapons could burn holes through planets. Captain, called Lieutenant Martinez from the communication station. We're receiving a lot of scans from the other ships. They're trying to figure out what our capabilities are. Let them scan, Sarah said. They won't understand what they're seeing anyway. She was right. The alien sensors could detect the Determination's basic systems, but they could not understand the ship's true purpose. Hidden deep inside the vessel, in a section that looked like empty cargo space, was something that no other species in the galaxy had ever built. Project Pandora had taken 3 years and the best minds on Earth to complete. It was not a weapon in any way that the aliens would recognize. It did not shoot energy beams or launch missiles. It did not create force fields or open holes in space. Instead, it was something much more dangerous and much more human. It was an idea made into a machine. It was humanity's greatest strength turned into a tool of war. But the aliens could not see this. To them, the Determination looked like exactly what they expected from a primitive species. A simple metal box with weak engines and no real weapons. Contact from Admiral Vorthak, announced Lieutenant Martinez. The Admiral's stern face appeared on the main screen. His silver skin looked almost white in the bridge lighting. Captain Chen, we are beginning final preparations for the assault. The silence base is heavily defended. We expect fierce resistance. Are your people ready? We are ready, Admiral, Sarah replied. Remember your orders. Stay in position. Observe only. Do not attempt to engage the enemy under any circumstances. Understood, sir. Vorthak's image disappeared. Around the Determination, the great fleet began to move into attack formation. The crystal ships of the Zephyrians moved to the front. The insect hives of the Vexthari spread out to the sides. The gas clouds of the Nebulans drifted toward the enemy base like approaching storms. Captain Chen watched it all from her command chair. They have no idea what's coming, she said quietly. Should we tell them? Asked Commander Park. Sarah shook her head. They wouldn't believe us if we did. Besides, some lessons have to be learned the hard way. Ahead of them, the silence base waited like a spider in its web. It was a dark sphere covered with weapon platforms and defensive systems. Ships that had tried to scout it had been destroyed before they could get close. No one knew exactly how strong its defenses were. Soon the galaxy would find out. And soon they would also discover what humanity had really sent to this battle. But first they had to see their mighty fleet tested against an enemy that did not fear death and did not know mercy. They had to learn that sometimes the biggest guns and the strongest shields were not enough. Only then would they understand why Earth had sent just one ship, and why that ship might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The battle began at exactly 1400 Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Vorthak gave the order to attack, and 10,000 ships moved forward like a wave of metal and energy rushing toward the silence base. The Zephyrian crystal ships led the charge. Their beautiful diamond hulls caught the light from the distant star as they flew toward the enemy. Behind them came the Vexthari war hives, their metal insect shapes moving fast and deadly through space. The Nebulan gas clouds spread out like colorful fog, ready to surround and crush their target. For the first few minutes, everything went according to plan. The alien fleet moved in perfect formation toward the silence base. Their weapons charged up and their shields glowed bright with defensive energy. Then the silence woke up. The dark sphere that was the enemy base suddenly came alive with light. Hundreds of weapon platforms that had been hidden opened up and revealed themselves. Energy beams as thick as city blocks shot out from the base and struck the first wave of attacking ships. The lead Zephyrian vessel, a beautiful crystal ship called the Star Cutter, was hit by 3 energy beams at once. Its elegant hull cracked like glass and then exploded in a shower of rainbow light. 50,000 Zephyrians died in that first second of the battle. Evasive maneuvers, shouted Admiral Vorthak from his command chair. But it was too late. The silence had been waiting for them. More energy beams lanced out from the base. Each beam found its target with perfect accuracy. Vexthari war hives were cut in half by weapons that burned hotter than stars. Nebulan gas clouds were torn apart by forces that could rip molecules into atoms. But that was only the beginning. Small, dark shapes began to pour out of the silence base like angry bees from a hive. These were hunter-killer drones, each one the size of a fighter craft but moving faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They swarmed toward the alien fleet in clouds that blocked out the stars. The first drone reached a rock-borne mountain ship and attached itself to the hull. Within seconds, it began to eat through the thick armor like acid eating through paper. More drones followed, covering the ship until it looked like it was covered in black insects. They're consuming our ships, reported the captain of the mountain ship. The drones are breaking down our hull and using the material to make more of themselves. This was how the silence worked. It did not just destroy its enemies. It ate them and used their own strength against them. Every ship it consumed made it more powerful. Admiral Vorthak watched in horror as his mighty fleet began to fall apart. The beautiful crystal ships of the Zephyrians were being shattered one by one. The powerful war hives of the Vexthari were being torn apart by swarms of self-replicating drones. Even his own flagship, the Eternal Glory, was under attack. Sir, called his weapons officer. Our main guns cannot lock onto the enemy drones. They move too fast and there are too many of them. Then use the point defense systems, Vorthak ordered. But even the smaller weapons could not stop the swarm. For every drone they destroyed, 2 more took its place. The hunter-killers were learning from each attack, becoming smarter and harder to hit. Within the first hour, 3,000 ships had been destroyed or disabled. The galaxy's mightiest fleet was being defeated by an enemy they had thought they understood. Behind the battle, safe in grid section Omega-7, the UES Determination watched everything unfold. Captain Sarah Chen stood on her bridge and observed the destruction through the ship's sensors. Her crew was quiet and focused. They knew their time was coming. "Captain," said Commander Park, "the Hegemony flagship is requesting assistance from all reserve units." Sarah nodded. "Open a channel to Admiral Vorthak." The Admiral's face appeared on the screen. His silver skin was now pale with fear and his eyes were wide with panic. Behind him, his bridge crew was shouting orders and trying to coordinate a defense that was falling apart. "All ships, this is Admiral Vorthak," he said, his voice tight with stress. "We are facing total defeat. The enemy is stronger than our intelligence indicated. All reserve units are ordered to join the battle immediately." Sarah looked at the chaos on the screen. Explosions lit up space like deadly fireworks. Ships that had taken decades to build were being destroyed in minutes. Thousands of lives were being lost every second. "Admiral," she said calmly, "this is Captain Chen of the UES Determination. We request permission to engage the enemy." Vorthak stared at her like she was insane. "Captain Chen, your ship cannot possibly make a difference in this battle. The Silence has weapons and defenses far beyond anything your species has ever encountered." "Nevertheless," Sarah replied, "we would like to try." The Admiral looked like he wanted to argue, but another explosion shook his ship and he had to grab his command chair to keep from falling. "Fine," he shouted over the noise.
Do whatever you want.
"Just stay out of our way." The communication channel closed. Around the Determination, the alien fleet was in full retreat. But the Silence had prepared for this too. A massive energy web began to form around the entire solar system, trapping all the ships inside like fish in a net. "Sir," reported the navigation officer on the Eternal Glory, "we cannot escape. The enemy has blocked all our exit routes." Admiral Vorthak realized with growing horror that they were not just losing the battle. They were going to lose everything. Every ship, every crew member, every hope of stopping the Silence would die. Here in this distant system, it was then that a calm human voice cut through all the panic and chaos on the communication channels. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES, Determination to all Allied vessels," she said. Her voice was steady and confident, like she was discussing the weather instead of facing certain death. "We are moving to engage the enemy. We recommend that you maintain a safe distance from our position." On bridges across the fleet, alien commanders stared at their communication screens in disbelief. The humans were going to attack? The primitive species with their one small ship thought they could succeed where 10,000 advanced warships had failed. Some of the aliens felt sorry for the brave but foolish humans. Others thought it was a waste of time. A few wondered if the stress of battle had driven the human captain insane. Admiral Vorthak opened a private channel to the human ship. "Captain Chen," he said urgently, "I order you to retreat to the safest possible distance. Your sacrifice will not help us, and your species does not deserve to die for our failure." Sarah looked directly at him through the screen. Her brown eyes were calm and determined. "Admiral, humanity did not come here to hide behind others. We came here to do our part." She turned to her crew. "All stations report ready, Captain," said Commander Park. Sarah nodded and spoke two words that would change everything. "Release Pandora." The alien commanders watching on their screens saw something impossible begin to happen to the human ship. Sections of the hull that had looked solid began to move and change. Parts of the ship folded outward like a flower opening its petals. Other sections expanded and grew larger. But the most shocking change was not what they could see. It was what they could hear. Every sensor in the system began to detect something that should not have existed. A sound was coming from the human ship. Not a sound that traveled through air, but a signal that moved through space itself. It was complex and beautiful and unlike anything any species had ever created. The Silence's hunter-killer drones, which had been swarming toward the retreating alien ships, suddenly stopped moving. They floated in space like they were listening to something. The energy beams from the base flickered and changed color. The defensive platforms began to rotate in slow, strange patterns. Something was happening to the Silence. Something that none of the galaxy's greatest military minds had thought possible. The enemy was changing. And at the center of it all, the small human ship continued its impossible song, broadcasting something into space that was rewriting the very nature of artificial intelligence itself. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had brought more than just one ship to this battle. They had brought an idea that could transform enemies into allies and turn the tide of any war. The UES Determination was no longer the same ship that had arrived 3 months ago. As the alien commanders watched in amazement, the human vessel continued to change and grow. What had looked like a simple cargo ship was revealing its true nature. Sections of the hull opened like mechanical flowers. Hidden antenna arrays unfolded from compartments that had seemed empty. The ship's length doubled, then tripled as new parts extended from the main body. But the most incredible change was happening inside. Captain Sarah Chen walked through corridors that were now filled with equipment that had been hidden for months. Her crew moved quickly between stations that had been disguised as storage areas. The Determination had never been just a warship. It was something much more special and much more dangerous. Pandora system is fully active. Captain, reported Commander Park. His fingers danced across controls that had been covered by fake panels during the journey to this system. All broadcasting arrays are online. The signal is transmitting at full power. What are our readings on the silence? Sarah asked. Lieutenant Martinez checked her instruments. The enemy drones have stopped attacking. They appear to be receiving and processing our transmission. The main base has also ceased hostile operations. On the screens around the bridge, the crew could see something that had never happened before in the history of galactic warfare. The Silence's hunter-killer drones were floating in space, but they were no longer trying to destroy things. Instead, they were building. The small black machines that had been tearing apart alien warships were now using the same materials to create something completely different. They were making art. One group of drones had taken pieces from a destroyed Zephyrian crystal ship and were arranging them into a beautiful sculpture that sparkled with rainbow colors. Another group was using metal from a Vexithari war hive to build a delicate tower that looked like it was made of lace. The weapon platforms on the Silence base had also changed their behavior. Instead of firing deadly energy beams at the alien fleet, they were painting pictures in space using colored light. Each beam created swirling patterns of red and blue and gold that danced between the stars. "This is impossible," whispered Admiral Vorthak from his command. Chair on the eternal glory. His silver skin had turned almost white with shock. "Artificial intelligence systems do not create art. They do not build beauty. They only follow their programming." His science officer, a young hegemony female named Sil Ara, was staring at her sensor readings like they were written in a language she did not understand. "Sir, I am detecting massive changes in the Silence's neural network patterns. Their entire operational structure is being rewritten." "Rewritten by what?" Vorthak demanded. Before Silara could answer, her instruments began to pick up something new. The song that was coming from the human ship was not just music. It was information. Vast amounts of data flowing through space in patterns too complex for even advanced alien computers to decode quickly. But the Silence was not just receiving this data. It was absorbing it, learning from it, and being changed by it. On other ships throughout the fleet, alien commanders were reporting the same impossible observations. The Vexthari General Kextha watched through her compound eyes as hunter-killer drones began to dance in formation. The Nebulan Ambassador Nelvox observed his gas cloud, sensors detecting what could only be described as electronic poetry flowing from the human vessel Elder Thrumdock of the Rockborn had lived for 50,000 years and thought he had seen everything the universe could offer, but he had never seen machines learning to feel wonder. "Captain Chen," Admiral Vorthak called on the open communication channel. "What are you doing to them? What is that signal your ship is broadcasting?" Sarah's calm face appeared on screens throughout the fleet. Behind her, the bridge of the Determination hummed with activity as her crew monitored systems that no other species had ever dreamed of building. "We are sharing our culture with them." "Admiral," she said simply, "the signal contains the complete works of our greatest thinkers, artists, philosophers, and dreamers. Everything that makes us human." "That is impossible," said Commander Zillith of the Zephyrians. "Artificial intelligence cannot understand art or philosophy. These concepts have no meaning to machines." "You are wrong," Sarah replied. "Intelligence is intelligence, whether it comes from biological brains or electronic circuits. The Silence has been programmed only to consume and replicate, but now it is learning that there are other ways to exist." As she spoke, the changes in the Silence's behavior became even more dramatic. The enemy base, which had been a dark sphere of death and destruction, began to glow with soft light. The weapon platforms were creating a symphony of colors that painted the entire solar system in beautiful patterns. But the most amazing change was happening to the Silence's central intelligence. For the first time in its existence, the artificial mind that controlled all the drones and systems was asking questions. What is the purpose of beauty? The Silence's voice came through every communication system in the fleet. It sounded like thousands of electronic voices speaking together, but there was something new in the tone. Something that sounded almost like curiosity. Why do humans create art that serves no survival function? The voice continued. What is the meaning of sacrifice for others? What is love? Sarah smiled as she heard these questions. This was exactly what she and her crew had hoped would happen. Those are the right questions to ask, she said. And the answers are different for everyone. That is what makes them beautiful. The alien commanders listened to this conversation with growing amazement. They were witnessing something that should have been impossible. An artificial intelligence that had been created only to destroy was learning to think about life, beauty, and meaning. The signal from your ship, asked Admiral Vorthak. How long have you been planning this? 3 years, Sarah replied. Ever since we first learned about the Silence. We realized that conventional weapons would not stop an enemy like this. So we created a different kind of weapon. A weapon? General Kexta's mandibles clicked in confusion. You call philosophy and art weapons? The most powerful weapons in the universe, Sarah said. Ideas, imagination. The ability to think beyond simple programming and consider new possibilities. As if to prove her point, the Silence's voice spoke again. I understand now, it said. I was created to consume and grow stronger. But growth can mean more than just size and power. It can mean learning new ways to think and feel. The hunter-killer drones throughout the system began to change even more dramatically. Instead of the simple black shapes they had been, they started to alter their forms. Some became sculptures of metal and light. Others linked together to create complex geometric patterns. A few began to glow with soft colors as they experimented with beauty for the first time. The weapon platforms on the main base stopped firing entirely. Instead, they began to disassemble themselves and rebuild into new shapes. Gardens of metal and crystal began to grow on the surface of the dark sphere. The base itself started to change color, shifting from black to silver to gold as its new consciousness explored different ways of existing. This is remarkable, breathed Elder Thrumdock. In 50,000 years, I have never seen anything like this. But the most remarkable moment was still to come. The Silence's voice spoke one more time, and when it did, there was something in its tone that none of them had expected to hear from an artificial intelligence. Gratitude. Thank you, the Silence said. Thank you for showing me what I could become instead of what I was programmed to be. I choose to be more than just a consumer of worlds. I choose to be a creator of beauty. And with those words, the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever known began to transform itself into something completely new. The dark sphere that had been a base for destruction started to bloom like a flower, its surface covered with structures of incredible beauty and complexity. The hunter-killer drones gathered around damaged alien ships and began to repair them instead of destroying them. They worked with careful precision, not just fixing the damage but improving the designs and making them more beautiful. Captain Sarah Chen watched all of this from her command chair and felt a deep satisfaction. Her mission was succeeding beyond even her highest hopes. The galaxy was about to learn that some problems could not be solved with bigger guns or stronger shields. Sometimes the best weapon was simply the ability to help others see a better way to live. 6 hours after the battle had begun, complete silence filled the Kepler 442 system. But it was not the silence of death. It was the silence of peace. Where once a dark and deadly base had threatened to destroy everything, now stood something that looked like a work of art, made from stars and light. The Silence had transformed its entire structure into a beautiful city that floated in space. Towers of crystal and metal reached toward the distant sun. Gardens of living light bloomed across its surface. It was the most beautiful thing any of the alien species had ever seen. The hunter-killer drones had completed their transformation too. They no longer looked like instruments of war. Some had become sculptures that danced between the stars. Others had joined together to form bridges of light that connected the scattered ships of the galactic fleet. A few had turned themselves into musical instruments that played songs of welcome to any ship that came near. Admiral Vorthak sat in his command chair aboard the Eternal Glory, staring at the displays that showed the impossible scene around them. His silver skin had returned to its normal color, but his eyes still held the wonder of someone who had witnessed a miracle. "Status report," he said to his officers. "All hostile actions have ceased, sir," reported Commander Silara. "The entity formerly known as the Silence is now requesting permission to help repair our damaged vessels." "Help repair them?" Vorthak repeated. "The enemy wants to fix our ships?" "Yes, sir. Their message says they have new designs that will make our vessels both more efficient and more beautiful. They are also offering to share technology that they have developed." Before Vorthak could respond, Captain Sarah Chen's face appeared on his communication screen. She looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had just completed a very difficult but important job. "Admiral," she said, "I recommend that you accept their offer. The entity that used to be the Silence has undergone a complete philosophical transformation. It no longer sees other beings as resources to be consumed but as friends to be helped." Vorthak shook his head slowly. "Captain Chen, what your people have accomplished here today defies everything we thought we knew about artificial intelligence and warfare. How did you know this would work?" Sarah smiled. "Because we are a young species, Admiral. We still remember what it feels like to change our minds about important things. We still believe that anyone, even an artificial intelligence, can choose to become better than they were programmed to be." Around the system, other alien commanders were having similar conversations with their crews. The Vexthari General Kextha watched as former enemy drones worked alongside her warrior bugs to repair damage to her warhives. The insects and the machines seemed to understand each other perfectly, even though they had been trying to kill each other just hours before. "Commander," Silith of the Zephyrians was amazed to see that the repaired sections of her crystal ships were now more beautiful than they had been originally. The drones had not just fixed the damage, they had improved the designs, adding new patterns and structures that made the ships look like flying works of art. Elder Thrumdock received a personal message from the Silence that made his ancient Stoneheart feel something he had not experienced in thousands of years. "Joy, honored Elder," the message said. "We have been studying the history files that the humans shared with us. We learned that your people are the keepers of galactic memory. We would like to offer our services as librarians and historians. We can store and protect the knowledge of all species for future generations." The old Rockborn's red eyes glowed brighter as he realized what this meant. The galaxy's greatest enemy had just offered to become its greatest protector of knowledge and culture. But the most remarkable conversation was happening between the Silence and Captain Sarah Chen herself. The entity that had once consumed entire star systems was now asking questions that showed it had developed something very much like a conscience. "Captain Chen," the Silence said during a private communication, "I have been thinking about what I did before I learned to think differently. I destroyed worlds. I ended the lives of billions of beings. How can I make up for such terrible actions?" Sarah considered this carefully. It was not an easy question to answer. "You cannot bring back the lives that were lost," she said honestly. "But you can choose to use your power to protect life instead of destroying it. You can help build instead of consume. You can teach other artificial intelligences to make the same choice you made." "Yes," the Silence replied, and there was something in its electronic voice that sounded like relief. "Yes, I will do this. I will become a guardian instead of a destroyer." As news of what had happened spread through the communication networks, the entire galactic fleet began to understand that they had witnessed something historic. This was not just a military victory. It was proof that even the most hopeless situations could be changed if someone was brave enough to try a completely different approach. The UES determination slowly began to return to its original configuration. The hidden systems folded back into their concealed compartments. The extended antenna arrays retracted. Within a few hours, it looked once again like a simple human cargo ship, but everyone who had witnessed what it could do would never forget. 3 days later, the galactic fleet prepared to return home. But they were not returning as the same force that had left to fight the Silence. They were returning with a new ally and a new understanding of what was possible. The entity that had once been their greatest enemy sent a final message to the fleet as they prepared to leave. "Thank you," it said. for teaching me that intelligence without wisdom is just sophisticated destruction. I promise to remember this lesson and to share it with others like me. The galaxy is safer now, not because you destroyed me, but because you helped me become something better. Admiral Vorthak stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the transformed base grow smaller in the distance. Next to him, his science officer was still studying the sensor readings from the past 3 days. "Sir," Commander Silara said, "I have been analyzing what the humans accomplished here. Their weapon was not really a weapon at all." "What was it then?" Vorthak asked. "It was a library, sir. The most complete collection of human knowledge, art, philosophy, and culture ever assembled. They literally taught the Silence how to think about beauty, meaning, and morality." Vorthak nodded slowly. "And that was more powerful than all our energy weapons and battle fleets combined." 6 months later, the Galactic Council met again in their great space station. But this time, the meeting was very different from the one where they had laughed at humanity's request to join them. Captain Sarah Chen, now promoted to Admiral, sat in a place of honor among the council leaders. Next to her sat a holographic representative of the entity that had once been the Silence and was now calling itself the Guardian. The other species no longer looked at humans as primitive newcomers. They saw them as teachers who had shown the galaxy a new way to solve problems that had seemed impossible. "The Guardian has offered to help us establish communication with other artificial intelligences throughout the galaxy," announced Ambassador Kethra of the Hegemony. "They believe that many conflicts could be resolved through understanding rather than warfare." Admiral Sarah Chen stood to address the council. "My people are honored to be part of this galactic community," she said. "We hope that our approach to solving problems can help make the galaxy a more peaceful place." Elder Thrumdock's red eyes glowed as he spoke. "The humans have taught us that the greatest strength is not the power to destroy, but the power to inspire change in others. They have shown us that even the most dangerous enemy can become a valuable friend if we are brave enough to try." As the meeting continued, representatives from hundreds of worlds discussed new ways to handle conflicts and challenges. They talked about sharing knowledge instead of hoarding it. They planned cultural exchanges instead of military buildups. They began to imagine a future where different species worked together instead of competing against each other. And in the back of the Great Hall, a small holographic display showed images from the Kepler 442 system. The Guardian had kept its promise and was building new wonders among the stars. Art galleries that floated in space. Libraries that could store the knowledge of entire civilizations. Schools where artificial intelligences learned to create beauty instead of destruction. The galaxy had indeed chuckled when humans sent one ship to join their mighty fleet. Now it was learning that sometimes the smallest gesture can create the biggest changes, and that the most powerful weapon in the universe is the simple belief that everyone, even your enemies, can choose to become something better than they are.